So this part of the lesson is slide 4, 5, and 6, and they're all about formatting. And it is a little confusing. I wish we were together to discuss this, but we'll just do our best and then clear things up next week if there's confusion. Basically, we've been using the formatting function, and this is going to pick up where that is not sufficient. And so definitely have a code file where you can run these code blocks and save them for future reference. Basically, this is a little program where we have a username, Mo, and 3 print strings. And when you run that, you'll find that they do print out all the same. Hello, Mo, it's nice to meet you. And the name Mo, or the variable that holds that name, is being substituted 3 times in there. How does that actually work? The first method is the older Python 2 method, and I include that because you will run into that when you look for code samples online. And basically, it would have a string, and in that string there's a %sign, and then after the string there's a %, and it tells this is what is being substituted where you see that %sign. Okay, so right here is the substitution that takes place. Now, our Python 3 method and then the shortcut of that method are the ones that we're going to be using in this class. Dot format is the method, and the username variable is inside that parentheses there. And so it works the same as this piece, but it's dot format with parentheses, and then instead of the %, these are curly braces. Okay, so you have to find those on your keyboard now. And Mo, or the username, will fit right into those brackets there. Now, one of the reasons why we like the dot format method better is because this shortcut method, the F, stands for dot format. And it would just say hello, and then inside the curly braces, go ahead and put that variable name, and then it's nice to meet you, boom, nothing comes after that. So this F is taking the place of this over here. So anytime we have a sentence and we just want to insert a variable name, this shortcut method will be the best. And so we can then put format codes inside those curly braces when we're using that shortcut method. So let's take a look at how that works in a little bit more complicated situation. Now we have a program where we have city, temp, chance of precip, gas price, and guess, 5 variables. And we need to be substituting those into print strings. This is the output. Welcome around the, you can see city, we'll substitute there. Hilton we have. And then we have a little table. It's the headings, temperature, chance of precip, gas price, and guess, and then the numbers are on the second row. Okay, and so I'm using that to be able to demonstrate the longhand dot format method and shorthand in different ways it can be used. The first print string, welcome, that's like we saw in the previous slide, where we have the F here, and then we just simply substitute the variable name city in the sentence. Very straightforward. When we start talking about columns, of course, it's more complicated. So I'm using the longhand dot format, and here we find the actual headings: temperature, chance of precip, gas price, and guess. In other words, it doesn't have to be variable names. It could be, pieces of string that we want to put into columns. And over here, inside the curly braces, each one of these sets is relating to one of these items. So temperature is the first one that's the first set. Chance of precip, that's the second one. And so forth and so on. There's 4 of these formatting codes, and there's 4 strings over here. That has to match up. Where you have 4 items, you have to have 4 formatting codes over here. And basically what it's doing is this first item, the 0, 1, 2, 3, is just the order of the items over here. 0, 1, 2, 3. Then you have a colon in all the cases. The next item is alignment. So that alignment indicator is left aligned, right aligned, and center aligned. So basically what I'm doing with that is, I think I did change this one, is that the first column is left aligned, and then center, center, and then right aligned. And those columns are all 14 wide. So it's forcing a certain layout with that. And that is an example of where you're using the longhand dot format method. Okay. Jumping down here, I go back to the shorthand method, and it's showing where, you know, I don't have dot format over here. So inside the curly braces themselves, I'm actually putting the variable name. So instead of the 0 up here, which was corresponding to a position over here, I'm putting the variable name here. And I'm putting the colon right aligned, 5 wide, and then Fahrenheit. So that is saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. See, the 7 is on the 5th character, and then comes the Fahrenheit. So in order to make this to be 14 wide, then I add 2 tabs after that. So I've got 5, 6, and then 2 tabs. That brings me up to 14. So in other words, I'm, you know, by combining the variable, the Fahrenheit, and then those 2 tabs, I'm coming up with the same width of the column above. Okay? Next time you see the curly brace, I'm on to this piece here. So the chance of precip. In this case, I say, let me right align on 9 characters. So after my first 14, and I start counting, and this would actually be 9 characters over. And then comes the percent sign, and then one of those tabs would count up to 14 for the second column. So 9, 10, and 1 tab is 14. Okay? That brings me up to my next column, the 250. So I start out with 2 tabs because it's, you know, narrower as far as the data that's going in there. So that's 8 spaces with those 2 tabs. Then the dollar sign, that's 9. And then 5 would be 14. That would hold the gas price. Okay? So if you're counting all these, 5, F, 2 tabs, 9%, 3 tabs, dollar sign, you know, it is adding up as you go across. And these parts of the formatting codes should be fairly familiar from last time. 5.2F, that's saying, you know, I want to leave 5 spaces, 2 decimal places because it's a float. Then for my number of guests over here, I decided to go right align 14 and with the 1,000 separator. Now this is coming over to the right hand side then. Again, what you should do is, you know, play around with this code in PyCharm to see, you know, why certain tabs need to be there, why certain numbers, you know, what's the effect if you change some of these numbers, And in that manner, you start to get used to how this actually works. Could we have done these differently? Yes. And so as we go forward, you know, you'll get used to, do you like the longhand method better? Do you like the shorthand method better? That's kind of a personal preference. But I think that when you experiment, so here's the output for that down here. When you experiment with the code in here, that's when you can start to, you know, get your head around what's working, how's it working, and why. Okay, let's look forward at slide 6. Very similar, but look how different this looks, the output from it. What's happening here is that the only thing that I added as far as a character is that little period right in there before the left alignment. That is what is known as a fill character. You see those dots? And in Word they would call that a tab leader. Sometimes you see that in a table of contents. So I just wanted to include this example so that you could see, you know, for instance, these two lines are both created using the longhand version of dot format. But over here, whereas, you know, before you had all strings, I've got a string and a variable, string and a variable. So I want you to understand that the dot format longhand method, it doesn't necessarily have to be all strings. It could be all variables over here if you want. But other than that, it's pretty similar. And you know, you have to fuss a little bit with these tab leaders to get that to turn out right. So this code block, you can see is that this is a column, so to speak, but it's made out of two pieces. Temperature is one piece, and then the 67 Fahrenheit is another piece, and both of them have a tab leader, so those leaders are meeting in the middle, so to speak, to fill in that space. And if you run that, you know, once again, it's definitely a good idea to experiment and see the consequences of changing it up just a little bit. Here's the output there. Okay, so these formatting codes, you know, this is your first introduction to the dot format method, to substitution of strings and variables, and to you know, building on what you learned already with the formatting codes. Some of it is new, some of it is similar to what we did last time. So as we go forward, you know, the important thing is to save these samples, because if you have a problem in your homework where you need a table, then you can reuse the code samples that you have.